And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to, you guessed it, Coffee Talk. That's right, Coffee Talk. And you can find me on YouTube at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University, simultaneously broadcasting Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are not subscribed there, please do check it out and see some of the other content there. Also, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Coffee Talk Chat is the moniker for that. And of course, Fistful of Radio, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. And of course, for those of you who are listening and not able to see what is going on, I do read through as many of the comments as is reasonable so that you can keep up with the conversation, because I do try to keep people included as much as possible. And I'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have chosen to chime in here thus far on the YouTube portion. I see Helter is here today. Dragon is here today. All People. Boogers says he made it on time. Yes, you did. Brian is here. Anisha is here. And they say they're glad they were able to make a live show. Well, glad you could come in today. I hope you get something out of it. I always say that at the end. I hope you got something out of the conversation, because it really is more like a conversation than reading the news. Sven is here from the last gasp of freedom, Michigan. And Claudia, it says, hello, fellow cat-loving prepper from New Jersey. Yes, and there you see, there's Dusty just jumped up in the chair behind me. I've got two in the room, Dusty and Miss Granny Smith with her permanent limp, poor thing. She's happy, though. Really interesting story about Miss Granny Smith as we get ready to dig into what is going on in the world today. What is going on in the world as we read through some of the news snippets. And I'll give you my 2 cents, whether you need change or not, as I sarcastically plow through what's going on here. And here we go. This is something from Snopes, and it's a fact check about that upside down satanic cross Ice Spice supposedly wore at the Super Bowl. And as they say here, supposedly wore, that means that they're going to fact check this as false. You can already tell from the title that that's the direction they're going in. And this is Ice Spice, the girl with the orange afro. I have no idea who this is. Apparently she's a rapper. I don't pay attention to modern music or modern anything, TV, movies. They're all crap. I think all of that stuff peaked in the 80s. Quite frankly, you had a nice string slowly building up from the 40s and gradually moving up and peaking in the 80s and then starting to tumble again. And by the time you got to the 2000s, it's few and far between that you get anything good in music or cinema or anything. But anyway, there's Ice Spice with her orange hair. And it says, claim rapper Ice Spice wore an upside-down satanic cross at the Super Bowl. And the context, the pendant designed by New York jeweler Alex Moss does appear to be in the shape of an inverted upside-down cross, but there is nothing inherently demonic or satanic about it. In the Catholic tradition, the inverted cross represents the martyrdom of St. Peter and is called the Cross of St. Peter. I haven't seen that. I'm not that versed in Catholicism, but I haven't seen Catholics wearing anything like that before. American rapper Ice Spice was among celebrities who watched Super Bowl, what is that, 43 or 48 with Taylor Swift on 58. Excuse me. I'm all over the place here. That's my gaffe for the day. 58 with Taylor Swift on February 11th, 24. Because of that, Spice was prominently featured in many photos and videos from the event, including ones that generated conspiracy theories about her jewelry. And it goes on to talk about social media posts. Here's the real problem. So they're denouncing this. They're saying that that's not what happened. It's not really. Here it goes. In addition to the not really upside down cross Spice wore at the Super Bowl, imaginative TV viewers also claimed she flashed a demonic hand gesture, and she actually used the harmless devil horns sign and wore clothing marked with, hold still, damn ads are messing it up. I can't read it. With Balenciaga fashion house brand, the conspiracy theorists have tried to associate with Satanism without any real evidence, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if she was making satanic signs or not. I don't know if it's an upside down cross or not. What I will say about it is and I mentioned this yesterday, the average person, your average Joe or Jane in the street, doesn't like these people anyway. They don't like Taylor Swift. We mentioned Dwayne Johnson yesterday. They don't like Dwayne Johnson. They don't like her. They don't like these people. The media tells you that everyone loves them. They don't. They do not like these people, number one. Number two, if you're going to act stupid or do something foolish, there's a million eyes watching, and they'll pick you apart because they don't like you. Okay? This Ice Spice or Spice Ice or whatever her name is, people really don't like her. They don't trust her. They don't worship her like the media says. All right. And childish as a lot of these people are, they're very immature. As soon as she saw the camera was on her, she starts making all these, I assumed, gang signs. I couldn't tell what she was doing. And then holding up her necklace and acting stupid like she's 9 years old. Instead of, remember in the old days when celebrities would see a camera was on them, a little wave and a smile. Hey, how you doing? And just let that be that. They can't do this crap anymore. They got to act like little children when the camera comes on and act foolish. And it draws a lot of attention, a lot of negative attention. But then again, as has been pointed out many times, when you're dealing with celebrity status, negative attention is as good as positive attention. Simple as that. So I catch up a few more of the comments here really quickly. Sven says it's a non-satanic upside down cross. Oh, wait. Yeah. All People says the coordinator of that event at Joel Osteen's church was in fact transmogrified. Okay. I was wondering about that. And that's not really even coming up in the news. I haven't seen much on it. Dragon says it's all one big commercial for business, consumerism, and greed. And Claudia says she was making satanic hand signals. Was she? I don't know. I don't recognize what she was doing. But all of that, and you know what I mean. It's like when you see little kids, like the example that I gave back in the day. Celebrity see a camera, hey, hi, how you doing, and just kind of be somewhat dignified. Now we get, oh shoot, camera's on me, yo, check it out, like a child. It's all so adolescent. And it's a shame. And we talked about that with Dwayne Johnson yesterday also, because he got relentlessly booed and got a record number of thumbs down on the video clips from WWE. And that's why we were discussing it. And Taylor Swift came up in that conversation because people don't like her either. And it was speculated in the comment section after the video aired, or the podcast from yesterday. Somebody said, well, they were booing because he's interfering with a current storyline. But that's not what I'm reading. That's the thing. And that may be something that really triggered people. Sure, they had a current storyline from some wrestler who I don't know who the hell they are, because wrestling peaked in the 80s too and went on a decline from there. All entertainment did, really. But in the comments, when you read through what people have to say about it and YouTube videos and TikTok clips of that event, is people going on and on about him being a hypocrite and about Maui, which has nothing to do with that storyline. People don't like him as a person, and that just feeds into it. All People says the Ice Spice sort of looks like she has a pumpkin on her head. Yeah, she dyed her afro orange, or she's wearing a wig. I have no idea. I don't care. I don't really know who she is. And if I heard her music, I probably wouldn't like it. Not a fan of modern music at all. And I see Urban Angst has made it here today. Glad you could pop in. As we shift gears here from the Super Bowl, because that's enough said about that, because who the hell cares? Is it really that critical? Are people really that enamored by the Super Bowl? Are they that enthralled? I don't understand it. I've never really been a fan of organized sports myself. But we're going to shift to UPS, because here it comes. You know, if it's anything to do with unions, I'm going to attack it. And this comes from Quartz. Quartz is the one laying out the news story. UPS is laying off 12,000 workers after the pay raises and falling revenue. Now, as you know, UPS was under the gun with the Teamsters Union, of which I've been a member of twice. They never did a damn thing for me. I worked for UPS, but I was not a driver. I was a grunt in the warehouse. And the Teamsters don't give a shit about them because they're expendable. You can find any idiot to sling boxes. The drivers and the pilots and the over-the-road transporters are considered skilled labor. And so they get all the attention, which means they get bigger paychecks, which is where a lot of the money comes from when you're talking about union dues. All right. So, yeah, they're going to push for these guys to get bigger checks. UPS can, despite how much corporate UPS makes, because that's always the argument. Well, people or CEOs are giving themselves. Okay, whatever. You know what? If you were in that position, you'd probably do the same damn thing. So get off your high horse. All right. Most people are angry about CEOs and people who trade stocks and all that because they can't do it themselves. But anyway, back to the point. It was only inevitable that this was going to happen. And the two factors. One, because the amount of money that's going to the drivers now, who were already making like a six-figure salary anyways, isn't sustainable for them to be able to keep making the kind of money that they are accustomed to for their shareholders and for the bigwigs. And there's a second factor, and it comes from the United States Post Office, which has adjusted its rates. If you're not aware, they've bundled different shipping methods under a certain weight class, and it has reduced the cost of shipping so that packages up to a certain point are now cheaper than using UPS when it used to be the other way around. But anyway, here we go. United Parcel Services plans to slash 2% of its 500,000 person workforce. Most of the 12,000 job cuts will be full and part-time management positions and contract roles, UPS executives said. No employees, hold still, damn ads. No employees represented by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters have been affected, the union, which represents some 300,000 UPS workers, told Quartz. The cuts are part of the delivery giant's efforts to change how it works, which include using AI and other technologies to make operations more efficient, said the CEO, Carl Tome. Notably, the types of jobs the company has decided to trim suggest how hard it is, goodness, to automate the labor-intensive work of being a delivery driver. UPS also reported that the revenue plunged 9.3% last year. The company posted an adjusted operating profit of $9.9 billion, down 28.7% from 2022. So at least they're cutting management. But that could get to be a problem also, because most of that micromanagement that they use is on the docks in the grunt stations for the people that are loading and unloading trucks, because there's a ton of micromanagement that goes on there. And I wonder how smoothly that'll run without dock managers patrolling like they normally do. All People says Damien Eccles also tried to falsely claim his behavior was connected to the Catholicism, despite being a Satanist and not Catholic. And Justin Case is here. Glad you could make it. He says, I finally made a live. Yes, you did. All People says the event coordinator at Joel Osteen's church was also a migrant. And Monkey says the only unions I can see being necessary are the ones in construction, where everything is a hazard or risk, i.e. concrete, steel beams, electricity. Well, that's why you're supposed to have a safety manager. It's supposed to be watching all of that and enforcing it. You don't need the union to make it safe if they have a proper safety coordinator and the employees are actually willing to listen to what they're being told. And Helter says companies like UPS will never pay for whatever agreement they make with the union. They'll lay off thousands and increase prices to the customers. Same with the big three automakers. And then Sven said Biden said it's not his fault. No, it's not his fault. Biden had nothing to do with it. He wasn't there that day. And there's Gary Edwards. He says he's late. Did you get it? Did you get a notification, Gary? I always wonder about that because I get a lot of complaints about people not getting notifications for the podcast or for the regular videos when they go out. But since we're talking about Biden now, since we brought up dear old, sweet old, reliable old, lovable old, honest old, transparent old, cognitively sound old Uncle Joe, he has a solution for your border problem. And this comes from State of the Union. Biden proposes citizenship path for undocumented immigrants. Well, I'll tell you, Biden, first of all, we had one. we had a citizenship path. We've been doing it for like a couple of 100 years. It's called you come to the country and you go through the process of becoming a citizen. You know, you learn the language, you get work permits, you get a green card, you get a job. You you learn about the country's history, that kind of thing. Ask Yakov Smirnov, he'll tell you. Yakov Smirnov actually did an entire television show on that called, what was it? What a Country, I think, where he was in a class to become a citizen. He was, I think his character was a New York City cab driver, and with a work permit, of course, and he was studying in a night class with other foreigners to obtain citizenship. Does anybody remember that show? Yakov Smirnov. And Gary Edwards says no notification and reminds people to please hit the like button. Yeah, please do. Urban says Joe Biden needs to be charged with spousal elder abuse. Oh, he's taken care of. They change his diapers. So here we go. President Biden called for a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants already in the U.S., including those who arrived during his administration. Yeah, because that's the record numbers right there. He emphasized the need for documentation and immigration reform, particularly for young dreamers. All right. That's a list word. I got to add that to the list. Dreamers. Dreamers. I got my list going. That's my list. I keep it right there. Words I am sick of hearing. Dreamers. You know what the problem is with dreamers? They never wake up and do anything. They just dream and think that their dreams are going to come true without any freaking effort. I'm sick and tired of people being called dreamers. All right? Don't be a dreamer, be a doer. Biden said, now it doesn't address everything I'd like that I wanted. For example, we still need a path for or documentation for those who are already here. Well, if they were legal, they'd have documentation. And we're not walking away from true immigration reform, including permanent protections and a pathway to citizenship for young dreamers who came here when they were children and who have been good citizens and contribute so much to our country. Oh, what are they contributing, Joe? Biden made these remarks amid record high numbers of illegal border encounters. He also shifted his stance on border security, now attributing any issues to the Republicans' failure to pass his border bill, despite House Republicans passing a border security bill that has been stalled in the Senate. Biden's statements come as public opinion increasingly disapproves of his handling of the border, with the majority blaming him for the crisis. Well, he is the one who signed off on that. He's the one that threw the border doors wide open, come one, come all, invited everybody to come into the country, ordered the Border Patrol to not really process anybody, not refuse anybody, not turn them away, not send them back. He tied their hands so they can't do their job, and then complained about the influx of people and wants to blame Republicans for not passing his border reform and foreign aid package. Talk about it all the time now. $118 billion package of which roughly 1% of it's actually going to the border, and the rest is pretty much going overseas, with the lion's share landing firmly in Ukraine. And we're supposed to trust this guy? I tell you what, Monkey says the Taiwan part I see, since CCP might just Hail Mary on taking the island since mainland's economy is tanking really bad. They've been threatening that for more than 50 years, though. And Merv says they're using the Hillary Clinton defense that no jury and find them guilty. James Comey did it. And as a press conference, they're trying to do the same with Joe Biden's behind. And Sven says, I dream of my children being able to raise my grandchildren with the blessing of freedom, not pissed away by your losers elected officials. No kidding. And then Brian said they probably got the dreaming idea from Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Well, that's his idea. He wants a clear, basically he just wants you to be able to become a citizen once you step across the border. You just an automatic citizen. Here you go. Congratulations. You made it. Like they ran through a gauntlet. You know, that wouldn't be so bad if we had something like the Running Man set up and there's a gauntlet that everybody has to go through filled with all kinds of booby traps and puzzles and stuff. And if they get all the way through, they can become a citizen. And if they don't make it, then I don't know, we feed them to crocodiles or something. Or like in Escape from New York, with Kurt Russell, Snake Plissken, the challenge, you have to make what was it, 6 baskets in 60 seconds, running back and forth across the basketball court. And if he makes it, he can go free. And if he can't, they'll shoot him. Wasn't that Escape from New York? All People says unions are designed to destroy businesses. Well, they had an honorable intention when they were formed. But like with all things, when they get too big, unfortunately, they attract people who corrupt the system. And now all the unions seem to do, at least in my experience, is drive a wedge between employees and management. A lot of things that could be resolved under normal circumstances. Urban says this is the slowest war in history, entire army of young men invading by the platoon load. And Monkey says Senate bill is basically a $95 billion bill to send aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Yeah, and then the rest of it trickled down somewhere. But I believe it's roughly 1% will actually end up in the border. And as far as covering for Joe, while we're covering up for Joe, the artistry, the name of the people that put this article out, is explaining how come Biden has so many gaffes. He misspeaks so much, but you're mistaken about why that is. This is a pandering article propping up Joe Biden, and I just wanted to pick on it a little bit. Misconceptions surrounding Biden's gaffes. What critics fail to understand. You see, you don't understand. You don't understand what the problem is. So here we go. They're going to explain it to you. Elizabeth Waniger from the Artistry is going to explain it. On Sunday, during an appearance at Meet the Press, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson mistakenly referred to an aid package for Israel as support for Iran. Similarly, on Fox News, Jesse Waters introduced South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem as hailing from South Carolina. Such errors are common among public figures, as evidenced by my own experience on a cable news panel where confusion arose between Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Representative Pete Sessions of Texas. Yesterday, President Joe Biden added to this list when he mistakenly referred to the Egyptian leader Abdel Fattah al-Sisi as the president of Mexico during a discussion about Gaza. Despite the slip-up, Biden's response demonstrated a clear understanding of the geopolitical landscape. Did it? Because I don't know what the hell he was talking about, including details about multiple Middle East Eastern players. However, critics seized on the mistake, especially given the context of a press conference called to respond to special counsel Robert Hur's report on Biden's handling of classified documents. Yet, Biden's tendency to mix up names and places is nothing new. Throughout his political career, he has been known for such gaffes, including famously introducing his running mate Barack Obama as the next president of the United States, Barack Obama in 2008. Despite these missteps, Biden's strengths lie elsewhere, such as his ability to connect with individuals on a personal level and navigate legislative processes effectively. Really? He connects with people on a personal level. Every person that he's connected to on a so-called personal level has walked away angry or in tears. Have you seen the veterans that he's talked to as he prattles on about his son that he says died in Iraq and that didn't happen? And they're like, he has a really incredible ability to make every situation about himself somehow and then act like he made a connection and then probably can't remember your name. And as far as the gaffes, yes, he has made a lot of gaffes. He has misspoken a lot ever since his brain surgery years ago. That's not a good sign, and it's not an excuse. And comparing that to other people making gaffes, it's not quite the same thing, especially when you're reading off of a teleprompter. Even if you are reading, I make gaffes all the time. Reading these articles, you know, the thing bounces up and down, I miss a word or I say the wrong thing. But if you know what you're talking about, you catch it and correct it. Representative so-and-so, oh, no, I mean senator. He's senator, not representative. You know it and you fix it. He doesn't fix anything because he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just reading the teleprompter, barely. And that thing is huge. It's huge. It's like a television, a modern flat screen. Monkey says YouTube doesn't like something. Basically, Biden is speaking live about the past bill. Okay. What are you talking about there, Monkey? Merv says, I'm rewinding my family passports and I paid every penny to follow the laws, jumped through every hoop 6 to 8 weeks. What for? You could have got dropped off anywhere and just crossed through Mexico. Booger says, I think that the Senate passed the foreign aid package. I heard that. I'm not sure, though. I'm not sure. Sven says he mistakenly put forward some of the most racist legislation in American history in the 90s. And Gary says if you remove the mummy, you get the comma chameleon. You guys are being silly. But yeah, they're trying to pander here, and they're trying to make it sound like, oh yeah, it's just mistakes everybody makes. It's the volume of mistakes and the fact that he's literally sitting here reading from a teleprompter and still can't get it right. He still can't get it right and doesn't make the corrections. And that kills me too, that the article says that he has a real personal way of reaching people. Does he? Do you feel like he knows what he's talking about? Do you feel like he understands your pain or your struggles when he talks to you? Or do you feel like he's talking down to you by pretending to emphasize, to not emphasize, to, oh, what's the term I'm looking for? I'll think of it in a second. See, that's a gaffe, but I know I made a mistake. Empathize is the word I'm looking for. Pretending to empathize with people by claiming that he suffered something similar and then making it up, like with his story about his house burning down, and it turns out it was a small kitchen fire that was under control in less than 10 minutes when the fire department showed up with hardly any damage. He made the whole thing up. He exaggerated the story. Monkey says the $95 billion bill Senate passed gives money to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. Excuse me. And Urban says if you want to run the world, you got to fight all of its wars at once? I guess so. There you go, all people. Hashtag weekended Bidens. That's how you do it. And Semper Fi made it. Glad you could make it today, Semper Fi. Glad you could make it today. Let's see, where are we now? Let's switch to the world of transmogrification. This is an article that's been circulating, and this is from Gangnam Times. Gangnam Times. I've been seeing this article, and I think this is a Canadian news story. Transmogrified athletes spark controversy at women's volleyball game in Canada. I've heard this. And this story was circulating a couple days ago, disappeared, and now it's back. 5 transmogrified athletes participated in a women's college volleyball game in Canada at the same time, sparking controversy. According to foreign media such as the UK's Daily Mail, on the 12th, local time, a women's volleyball game between Seneca College and Centennial College was held in Toronto. On the 24th, in this game, 5 transmogrified athletes, including 3 from Seneca and 2 from Sentinel, drew attention. On that day, the transmogrified athletes played full time throughout the game without even being substituted. As a result, some female athletes could only sit on the bench and watch the game. Seneca, who had more transmogrified athletes participating, won. There is no clear regulation on the participation of transmogrified athletes locally, which continues to be criticized for harming other athletes. In particular, one of the transmogrified athletes from Seneca, Franz Lagadas, played on the men's volleyball team in the 2022-2023 season. Still, he transitioned and made a name for himself as a female player in less than a year. Oh, that's convenient. So you suck on the male team, and then you jump to the female team and you're a star. Meanwhile, it was reported that out of the 6 transmogrified athletes affiliated with the Ontario College Athletic Association, 5 have not undergone any hormone therapy or surgical operations. So they're not getting any injections. They've got no surgery. Basically, they just tied their hair back and now they're a chick, is what they're suggesting here. And this article doesn't tell you. I read a previous article on this that one of these transmogrified athletes seriously injured a girl in another game earlier before this one with a spiked ball that hit her in the head so hard that she ended up in the hospital with a concussion or something like that. So there you go. Carrick is here. Glad you could make it today. And Gary Edwards says, I have more in code nowadays to avoid the wokey pokey algorithmic, the algorithm. And Urban says, David Menzies from Rebel News was not allowed to film teenage girls at the swim meet. Yeah, we talked about the swim meet like a month ago, but a 50-year-old male pretending to be a female is allowed to shower with them. Yeah, well, it was a 50-year-old. The guy was in his 50s. He was a competitive swimmer, a professional competitive swimmer, although I'm sure he's not too good anymore. And he identified not only as female, but as a little girl. And I believe that the girls that were participating were aged 13 to 17 was the age category. He identified as a young girl or a teenager or something and was allowed to swim with them. I don't know if he showered with them, but I know he was allowed to swim with them, and I could not find out where he placed in that swim meet. I can't imagine that even though he's male, he could have done very good at like 54 or however old he is. But this is just getting stupid, and it's being called out all over the place, including in Canada, because Canadian citizens are not really behind this, but the government is. The government is. And like I said, I don't know who. Another article was better than this one. This one kind of dropped off. I would have pulled up the other one if I had it, that they were talking about how, again, one of these conveniently transmogrified boys who are not getting surgery or hormone therapy at all seriously injured another player and had also injured other players, but not to the point of concussion. which I think is an important point. All people says they have no respect for anyone who came to the U.S. for the American dream or for a better life. Those are one-sided benefits that don't include we the people. I owe them nothing. Okay. And Helter says, if anyone speaks out against this, the majority of public will call you a bigot, a hater, intolerant, non-inclusive, and so on. Canada is slowly going to hell in a handbasket. Well, they can call me a hater if they want to. And, I am. Okay, how about that? By the biblical definition, all right? Because if you want to talk about the biblical definition of hate, is not really an emotional concept. The biblical definition of hate is more akin to rejection. It's a verb. You are rejecting something. In particular, you should reject sin. And I regard that as being sinful. Therefore, I reject it. And technically, I hate it from a biblical standpoint. So there you go. Dragon says it isn't a political issue. It's a common sense issue, which most of society no longer has. Urban emphasizing this was in Barrie, Ontario, in a public recreation center. The swim meet, I believe you mean. And Brian says haters are just people with different opinions. Well, yeah, they'll label me a hater if they want to. I've been called all sorts of things. I've been called cruel and mean. I've been called racist more times than I can tell you in videos and in the comment section. You're just a racist asshole. And what? Okay, fine. Yeah, that must be it. Whatever, buddy. I don't care what they call me. I refuse to back down on my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. And maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong on something. Tell me that I'm wrong. And this is something that comes up a lot when I do the mailbag videos for this channel. They cuss me out and tell me I'm wrong, but they don't want to explain how or why. All right, well, then you have no point. You have no point to make as far as I'm concerned. You comfortable back there, Dusty? Dusty looks really comfortable in that chair. And Gary says confusion is not of God. Well, I wouldn't imagine that Yehovah would be confused. Dragon says, who would have thought the South Park was correct when they said that the men in Canada have had vaginas was true? Well, they think they do. They're pretending. They're pretending to have vaginas. It's there in spirit. It's there in spirit, guys. That's how it works. And all people, I'm going to trigger you here. How's this for pandering? How's this for trying to set a precedence? We're going to jump to Massachusetts. Western Journal article. Family gets call to host migrants. New housemates are dropped off in less than an hour. Oh, that's convenient. That's convenient. Facing a swelling population of homeless migrant families, Massachusetts has resorted to a desperate measure, recruiting residents to serve as volunteer hosts while longer-term housing solutions are arranged. According to a July story by WBUR, with state-run facilities filled to capacity with migrants and the homeless people while they're on the street, Massachusetts started a host family initiative to provide temporary room and board. We've talked about this before because they're trying this in Massachusetts, New York, and New Jersey. Gerald Gabu, the executive director of the Immigrant Family Services Institute, oh God, told the outlet, while the state is trying to figure out exactly what to do and how to open up more shelters, I think we as citizens, as members of our community, we also need to play a role. I'll play a role. I will help you to put them back where they came from. How about that? In August, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey and Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll requested Massachusetts families to consider housing migrants in their homes due to the lack of space. Are you going to compensate them for it? Quote, if you have extra room or suite in your home, please consider hosting a family. Safe housing and shelter is our most pressing need. Become a sponsor family. Step up if you're willing to have an additional family be part of your family, Driscoll said in a news conference. You know what's funny about that? If you wanted to foster a child, they'll run you through hoops for years. I am certified for foster. I used to do fostering in Kansas, and they'll jump you through hoops. According to the Brookline News, a news outlet serving the Boston suburb of Brookline, Brookline town meeting members Jessica and Colleen Stokes read an email from another elected official in November about the migrant crisis overwhelming Massachusetts shelters and said they felt moved to help. Okay, here's what we're staging for you here. This is why I say this is staging. You have Brookline town meeting members, Jessica and Colleen Stokes, reading an email from another elected official, and now they want to volunteer suddenly. After discussing the idea with their college-age daughter and teenage son, the Stokes told state refugee officials they could likely take in a family short term. The Brookline News reported, "Good luck getting them out of your house once they put them there." They didn't expect the call to come so soon. On January 6th, the Stokes family got an urgent call. A Haitian family of 4 needed shelter immediately after spending 4 nights on the hard floor of Logan Airport, where many migrant families have taken shelter. Nobody should be sheltering at the airport unless there's just been a global disaster. A meteor better have struck downtown Boston if people are sheltering at the airport, okay? That should not be permitted at all, in my opinion. And wow, are you in for a culture shock with a Haitian family of 4 going to crash at your place? The Haitian natives have fled their homeland's poverty, first for Chile, then to the United States after a journey that crossed South and Central America before the family arrived in Eagle Pass, Texas. The Stokeses readied their spacious carpeted guest room with a queen futon and 2 twin beds to make the family more comfortable. Oh, man. So here you go. Here's your poster family associated with the Brookline Town Hall. I know Brookline. I didn't know Brookline was annexed because they said that it's, how did they describe Brookline? I read it up in here that it's a suburb of Boston suburb of Brookline. I didn't think that Brookline was annexed. I know Alston and Brighton are annexed, but not Brookline. I thought Brookline was independent. They need to be. But oh my God. Here we go. Booger said, I'll catch up some comments. Booger says, instead of us taxpayers paying for transmogrification, why not just make them eunuchs? It would be cheaper. Essentially, they are. They are eunuchs at this point because the equipment's been removed. It's the modern equivalent of being a eunuch. It's irreversible. You're not fixing it. You're not fixing it once they've started cutting things off. You're not ever fixing that. So they are the modern equivalent of eunuchs. And yeah, taxpayers are funding this. And that's the most insulting part. Monkey says, the people that want to call me racist, I just hit them with that, yes, I like racing. Okay. Urban says the local homeless can share their tents and tarps with the migrant homeless. That'll work out great. And Sven says, stupid, they have not been vetted. Also, those people are getting paid to host. They have to be. There has to be some sort of a financial incentive in order to encourage that. Although I can't find what it is. I can't find specifically what it is, but they're not going to get anybody to cooperate with that unless there's a check. All People says the transmogrified athletes are always violent towards actual women due to their rage-filled jealousy against these true women, which is something that you've seen in the mixed MMA, where they've had dudes claiming to be women, and they pummel these female opponents till you can't even recognize them. And Dragon says the people who are pushing for mass illegal immigration should set an example and host these illegals for free at that. Gary Edwards says Loyalists asks if you feed and house King George's Hessian troops. There you go. That's how it works. And Semper Fi says, I understand that people need help, but we wouldn't volunteer to take in immigrants before veterans. Thank you, Semper Fi. I totally get where you're coming from there. And Raccoon says, in entertainment news, I know LPH likes wrestling. How does she feel about the Vince McMahon situation? Does it tarnish her love for wrestling? Well, nobody ever liked Vince McMahon. This is the thing that gets me about the whole thing with Vince McMahon. Why is anyone surprised? Everybody that you have ever talked to that has ever worked with Vince McMahon has never had anything good to say about him except for The Undertaker and Dwayne Johnson. They kiss his ass 100%. Everyone else, they'll say really nasty things about him and then flip it. I've read some of the books. I've read Bret Hart's book. I've read Hulk Hogan's book, so on and so forth. And he'll go on and on about that, hating Vince's guts. Vince said this, Vince did that. Oh, I forgave Vince and we moved on. He's been a bastard to people for decades. Why is anyone surprised that he's tied up in something really nasty? Who's shocked by this? Who likes Vince McMahon? Who doesn't feel like he's exploited people his entire life? So there was never any love for him anyways. I don't know why anyone acts surprised. Helter says next week's headline, family house robbed by migrant house guests. It's going to be tough when they said temporarily. What does temporarily mean? Because don't expect them to be trying to leave anytime soon. It's not easy to deal with house guests, even if you like them. Merv says we need to reduce our government. Let's get organized and start doing it. Good luck. And Urban says puberty blockers for male result in a micro penis where it doesn't really develop and has no functionality beyond urination. Then it's much easier to manipulate them into bottom surgery or mutilation. Ugh. I don't agree with the use of puberty blockers anyways, and that's something that they try to prescribe for a lot of different things. Even if your kid is going through growth spurts, you know how some young adults, and I use that loosely because I really mean teenagers, especially males, they go through a spurt. Suddenly, a year goes by and they're 7 inches taller. They will try to convince you to give those kids puberty blockers now to reduce the or growth blockers to reduce the pain of the rapid growth or the discomfort. Don't do that. It causes lifelong problems. Lifelong problems. Gary Edwards says fish and guests both stink in 3 days. Oh my. And Gary Edwards is making some biblical reference about eunuchs. Behold, there are 3 types of eunuchs, and that's a quote from Matthew 9, 11, and 12. I can't tell you off the top of my head. I'm going to assume this is correct. Some who were born so from the womb, some who were made so by men, and some who made themselves so for spiritual reasons, body, mind, and spirit. There you go. There you go. Incredible the world that we live in today. Absolutely incredible the world that we live in today. Now, this is a pet peeve article. This is one that pisses me off. And it's akin to, it's going to talk about this girl with a high IQ. All right. And I've mentioned it before. Many, many, many years ago, I did a research for a college paper that I did about child geniuses and where are they now? And because you see it every once in a while, they've got the child. You see it more often now with the internet. But back in the day, 60 Minutes, 2020, or some local news, and it's like, oh, so and so is 8 years old and composes music, and so is 12 and speaks 3 languages, whatever. And they have an IQ of X, and it's as high as so and so, and they go on and on and on about it. And my research, I took I don't know, a dozen or so, I forget the exact number, 10 or 12 of them, from these news stories, these big news stories, and did a "Where Are They Now" article. None of them amounted to a damn thing. They didn't do shit with their intelligence. Nothing. Not a zip. I think the best example was one of them was a manager of a supermarket as an adult. Most of them weren't even working. But there was a couple of them that all they did was go to college. They'd go to college for decades, have like 5, 6 degrees, and just keep getting grants and going back to college. They did nothing with the intelligence, zero. And my speculation was because of pressure from adults. I remember one of these interviews, and I think it was on Unsolved Mysteries, actually. It might have been on Unsolved Mysteries, was in tears, wondering how he's going to change or help the world. He amounted to nothing either. It's pressure. Where does a child get that kind of pressure from? From their parents, from society, from adults pushing them. Oh, you're so smart. You're going to fix the world. They don't want to fix the world. They want to be a child. It doesn't matter how smart they are. That's why this article pisses me off. But there's something in particular about it that upsets me, and I'm going to point it out. And this article comes from the Daily Mail. Student with higher IQ than Einstein and Hawking calls for more aid. And this is the student who looks like she's in her 30s, quite frankly. How old is this student supposed to be? A girl with an IQ of 161 who is taking 28 A levels is calling for more support for gifted pupils, as she admitted that teachers are struggling to keep up with her. That's because, is she in public school? They're not that smart anyway. Mahnor Chima, 17, from Slough. Where's Slough? Said that when she arrived in Britain aged 9 from Pakistan, her school refused to let her move up a year. All right, that's because it's public school. So, and I know in the United States, I don't know how it works in the UK. You need an IEP even if you're too smart. And if you can't get it, they won't help you. And then they can't help you anyway because you're dealing with their curriculum and you might have an intelligence that's outside of it. And I have a hard time still believing this girl's 17 years old. Who else thinks she's like 32? Just saying. And I guess that's her dad over here, I'm assuming. It says, despite quickly getting through her class, hold still. Classwork set by teachers at Collinbrook Church of England Primary School in Berkshire, the teenager said she was given extra math instead of being allowed to progress to the next stage of her education. Ms. Chima said that the institution also put her in a group set up to encourage children to make friends where they would make pancakes, she told the New York Times. Okay, so, gee, school's wasting her time. Join the club, sweetheart. Now, the thing that gets me about this article, as I round this off, you already know I have a problem with the school anyway. I'm assuming someone in the UK, I know people from the UK watch this, fill me in here. Is that a public school she's going to? Again, Collinbrook Church of England Primary School in Berkshire. I don't know if it's public school or not. If it is, doesn't surprise me a bit that she's not getting anything out of it. The other thing is the article's title, Student with Higher IQ Than Einstein and Hawking Calls for More Aid. All right. Whenever they do these things with the genius kid with a high IQ, and with all the ones I did the research on as well, they always compare them to three people: Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, and Sir Isaac Newton. And they always say, right here, student with higher IQ than Einstein and Hawking called for more aid. Student with higher IQ than Einstein and Hawking. Or Sir Isaac Newton is the other one they always throw out there. You want to guess what three people never had an IQ test? Look it up. Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, and Sir Isaac Newton never had an intelligence quotient test. Never. So how can you compare anyone's IQ in the modern era to their IQs without knowing what their actual intelligence quotient is? All you can do is speculate, and the numbers are all over the place. No one actually has any freaking idea. Nobody does. All People says the child genius by Bobby Fischer never seemed to make it in the adult years with mental stability, just like child actors. Urban says they recall a story about a guy with 150 plus IQ. The test didn't even go that high. He worked as a bouncer, farmhand, and construction worker and lived in a converted garage. And that was Christopher Langan. Excuse me. Gary Edwards says in the 40s and 50s, smart kids were allowed to advance quicker, which was so not inclusive. And that's really kind of the problem, isn't it? Robert Hodges says these smart people making great attorneys who do not have the IQ of a melon. Yeah. And Urban says, what's the IQ of the person who wrote the article? I don't know. Probably less than 100. Probably average. What is average nowadays? I have no idea. Helter says high IQ is not a clear indicator of one's intellect, which is a good point, which is always my Kit Carson argument. I did a paper on Kit Carson once upon a time, too. American frontiersman, one of the heroes of the Old West. Guy spoke, including Indian Sign. I'm counting Indian Sign Language with this. 13 languages, Kit Carson. Leathersmith. He used to run wagon trains. He was a fur trapper. He was a backwoodsman. You name it. If it was in the Old West, he did it. Could not read or write. He couldn't even write his own name. So how intelligent was Kit Carson? And that was the argument of my paper, because I can't speak 13 languages. Can you? Gary Edwards says Einstein, Newton, and Hawking played poker with Data on Star Trek. Yeah, that's right. In the holodeck, correct? And Monkey says, reminds me of the article. It says, insert smart famous person had autism. I hate it when anyone of new or news article says that. And autism, because it's a spectrum now, you can be like barely fitting into the spectrum of autism, and they'll label you autistic. And your functionality is so high, it's unclear if you even have it. You know what I mean? The same thing with ADHD. You can barely have it, or you could argue that it doesn't. They don't even really have it. That they don't even really have a problem. But people will wear that label for sympathy, for empathy, for a check, for whatever they can get. Because that's how people are. All People says that Pakistan migrant child will so be discovered to have been the mother of five what? Teen sons the entire time? Is that what you're saying? Brian says, I heard Einstein plagiarized his theory. There's a book written on it called The Incorrigible Plagiarist. Really? I don't think I've heard that. And Robert says he ran into these smart people in college, women, when they flush the tampon and pads, I had to go unclog them as a paid plumber. Oh no. I've been there. I used to work for Ronex when I was a teenager in the early 80s. I worked for the Ronex Corporation, and I used to clean one of their office buildings. I used to clean all of their public restrooms in the office building before going to school in the morning, and that was in junior high school. I get up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and clean their bathrooms. And the men's room, let's tell you everything you need to know about genders. The men's room was usually littered with newspapers and stuff. There was a lot of stuff just on the floor. Okay. Newspapers, there would be a magazine. Sometimes there'd be a dirty magazine laying around. The trash would be full of paper from hand washing and so on. The women's bathroom was disgusting. Not only was there discarded paper on the floor, it wasn't newspapers and magazines, but used tissues, used toilet paper, pads. The trash was overflowing, not just full, but overflowing. Toilets were clogged. The toilet paper, there was never any toilet paper. Never. The napkins were always gone. The soap was always empty. Everything was used up. The plumbing was damaged. They would damage the plumbing more often than in the men's room. It's like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. Oh, man. A couple more here. I got to wrap up. Monkey says, people encouraged me to use my ASD for stuff which I hated. To hell exploiting my condition for things. Yeah, if you're capable, you don't need the label. You don't. You really don't. And Gary says, I went to 3 grade schools, 2 junior high schools, and 8 high schools. The quality of education and school lunches varies immensely from school to school. And with that, I'll go ahead and start to wrap things up. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and that is at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University on YouTube. Please find me there, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta, Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. Say hello or goodbye to Dusty sitting in the chair. There's Miss Kitty on the floor. Snuck in here to keep me company, which is amazing because she usually doesn't go in any room where there's other cats. There's Granny Smith. Oh, you can't see her. Sitting on the boxes back there as I wrap things up. Glad you all had opportunity to pop in here today. Thanks for joining us. Hope you got something out of the conversation. And with that, I will go ahead and wrap things up, and we'll do this again tomorrow.